Hello, I'm Simon Whistler. You're watching TopTenzNet, and in the video today, the top 10 deadliest days in American history. Quick, what's a scary date for you? A date that fills you with foreboding and a feeling of bad luck? Well, we're guessing a lot of people probably just plumped for something with a 13 in it, or maybe perhaps Halloween. Well, common sense has got news for them. Disasters don't happen when we expect them to. Instead, they have a habit of coming in rather out of the blue, sowing chaos, and then vanishing, leaving us all standing around wondering what the heck just happened. And so it is for the deadliest days in American history. We've gone digging through the history books and found what appear to be the 10 days with the highest number of deaths to ever take place on American soil. While some, such as 9/11, aren't going to come as a surprise to you, others you might never have heard of before. And guess what? There's not a single Friday the 13th among them. And just a quick note before we get started here, we are only counting people who were killed in a single 24-hour window. Hence, some famous Civil War battles are missing. And if you got that, well, let's get started. Number 10. October the 18th, 1971, the Peshtigo Fire. Death toll at least 1,200. In fall 1871, there was probably nowhere in the United States as flammable as the Wisconsin town of Peshtigo. The summer had been one of the driest in memory, and Peshtigo was right in the epicenter of wildfire territory. Despite this, the buildings were all made out of wood, the bridges into the town were made of wood, and the entire town, plus the roads in it, were covered in sawdust. If you're thinking this sounds like a recipe for disaster, well, congratulations, you're even more right than you realize. On October the 7th, a huge wildfire broke out not far from the town. It spread quickly, swallowing the village of Sugar Bush and killing all of its residents. But this turned out to just be the starter before the main course arrived. Winds whipped the fire until it was 200 feet high and burning at 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It was so hot that it caused trees it touched to explode like bombs. It was this beast of a fire that blew into Peshtigo shortly after midnight. The results, they weren't pretty. People burned to death in their homes. Those who jumped into the river, they were just boiled alive. All told, over 1,200 people were killed. Yet, the nation, it barely noticed. The Great Chicago Fire had broken out at the same time, and the papers simply reported on that instead. Number 9. April the 9th, 1865, Sultana Disaster. Death toll, approximately 1,700. Don't be concerned if you've never heard of the Sultana. Not very many people have, despite the staggering number of people who were killed. That's probably due to when it happened. The Sultana sank just after the end of the Civil War, when the press was busy with other more important stuff. We're guessing that the whole 7 years ago thing was probably very little comfort to the families of the dead. The setting was Vicksburg. Newly released Union POWs were being evacuated up the river on steamers, and the government was paying big money for each soldier returned. So steamboat captains were stuffing as many men as possible onto their boats, way beyond the point remotely considered safe. The Sultana's captain, he was even worse. When his boiler sprung a leak, he patched it up, desperate not to lose his lucrative commission. He then stuffed 2,300 people on board a boat that was built for under 1,000. And you can probably see where this is going. Shortly after midnight, about 5 hours after it left Vicksburg, the Sultana exploded. The boiler burst and triggered a massive fire which killed nearly everybody on board. And what's the lesson here? Well, if you're a steamboat captain and you're watching this video, never cut corners. Number 8. May the 31st, 1889, Johnstown Flood. Death toll 2,209. No, this is not the far more famous Johnstown Massacre with a death toll of 909. The Johnstown Flood was the much deadlier, almost namesake of the 1978 disaster. While it wasn't malicious, it was powered by a level of stupidity that's somehow even more maddening. Prior to May the 31st, 1889, Pennsylvania's South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club had been asked repeatedly to repair their leaky dam. They simply never did this. The night of May the 30th was marked by unusually heavy rain. The next morning, the dam finally gave way. The result was a roaring, rolling wave of water 60 feet high, which swept downstream, picking up debris, rail cars, and barbed wire until it was a gigantic wave of terror and death. It hit the township of Johnstown at 40 miles an hour and proceeded to cause, well, death and terror. Most of the town was simply just swept away. When the debris finally crashed to a halt against a railway bridge, it caught fire, meaning survivors of the initial flood were then swept helplessly into a deadly inferno. All told, 2,209 people died that day. The Fishing and Hunting Club? Well, they didn't even pay a dime in compensation. Number 7. June the 27th, 1862. Battle of Gaines' Mill. Death toll 2,377. Here's a little secret about battlefield casualties. Most of them aren't actually deaths. When you read about over 50,000 casualties at the Battle of Gettysburg, it's also including those who were captured, wounded, or went missing alongside the dead. Typically, only 20% of the casualties in the Civil War were actually people who were killed, which is why this video isn't just a list of Civil War battles. Now, the Battle of Gaines's Mill wasn't much different in this respect. What changed was the sheer number of total casualties. In less time than it would take to watch the Lord of the Rings trilogy with the extended cuts, 15,000 men were wounded and 2,377 were killed outright. Part of the 7 days battles, Gaines's Mill was a bruising 9-hour punch-up on the fringes of the Confederate capital Richmond. We could go deep into the historical background, but really all you need to know is that it was marked by total incompetence on both sides. Confederate generals led their men into battle up a steep hill, allowing Union soldiers to pick them off, while General Cooke on the Union side wasted hundreds of lives in a useless casualty charge. Before the sun had set on that single day, over 2,300 people lay dead. Number 6. December the 7th, 1941, the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Death toll 2,403. Of all the sucker punches ever delivered against the USA, perhaps none stung so bad as the attack on Pearl Harbor. At 8 a.m. Sunday morning, hundreds of Japanese bombers appeared out of the blue skies over Hawaii and did what bombers do. They destroyed US Navy ships, blew up US planes, crippled the South Pacific Fleet, and did so while only sustaining minimal casualties. On the US side, the picture, it was far less rosy. Over 2,300 servicemen were killed outright, with another 100 or so dying shortly after from their injuries. Now, you probably don't need me to tell you what happened next. The day that shall live in infamy, as FDR called it, spurred the US into going to war with Japan, which meant also going to war with Italy and Nazi Germany. The result was America entering a little conflict that was known as World War II, which led to even more deaths on a truly colossal scale. Still, it also led to no more Hitler, no more Holocaust, and no more militaristic Japan, so I suppose that's a win. Number 5. September the 28th, 1928. Okeechobee Hurricane. Death toll 2,500 minimum. So back in 1928, early hurricane warning systems, they weren't even a pipe dream, which might explain what happened in Palm Beach County, Florida, one fateful September day that year. An unnamed storm had just trashed the Caribbean, killing over 1,500 people. It made landfall in the United States at a time when Palm Beach County was utterly unprepared for anything above a minor gale. Those warnings that did arrive just ahead of the storm were mostly ignored. People, they'd seen hurricanes before, and they didn't think it would be that bad. Well, history records that as a major mistake. When the Great Hurricane of 28 made landfall, it made every previous hurricane look like a mere puff of a breeze. Buildings vanished, trees flew through the air. When it hit Okeechobee Lake, it disintegrated a dike, unleashing a storm surge that flooded the surrounding farming communities. Of these 6,000 people living around the lake, nearly half would be killed, about 3/4 of who were African-American laborers. To add insult to injury, the non-white dead didn't even get markers for their graves. Number 4. September the 11th, 2001, 9/11. Death toll 2,996 people. Of all the other items on this list, maybe only Pearl Harbor lives on so vividly in memory. The only day in the 21st century to result in anywhere near as many deaths. Hurricane Katrina killed well over 1,000, but over the course of several days, 9/11 was carnage on a scale most of us had never witnessed before. Just after 9 a.m. on Tuesday morning, Al-Qaeda terrorists slammed planes into the sides of the Twin Towers before smashing another into the Pentagon and another into a field in Pennsylvania. Had the day stopped there, it would have already been enough to get on this list. Many hundreds died on impact in both towers, while another 200 or so died at the Pentagon and in Pennsylvania. But as we already know, this isn't where it ended. Despite the towers being designed to withstand a hit from a plane, both collapsed, killing hundreds and hundreds more. When the dust finally settled and a reckoning could be made, it was discovered that more people had died than during the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Somehow, 19 hijackers had managed to cause more carnage than an actual war fleet. Number 3. April the 18th, 1906. San Francisco earthquake. Death toll 3,000 people minimum. So here we are, the only 3 days in which more than 3,000 people were killed on American soil. Appropriately enough, the first one started off with a cataclysmic bang. At 5:13 a.m. on April the 18th, 1906, San Francisco woke up to the sounds of the San Andreas Plain shifting, triggering a massive earthquake. The quake itself was bad enough, a violent shaking and tearing that killed an unknown number of people. But it was what came next which really made this day so bloody. The damage triggered a fire which went out of control and tore through the city. People who had just survived a devastating quake found themselves being burned alive. The overall death toll is incredibly unknown. We know it was more than 3,000 people, but after that, we're basically just guessing. Hundreds of deaths in Chinatown are known to have been underreported, and plenty of homeless people also likely perished. However, even this disaster did have a small upside. The city was reconstructed in a less sprawling and more logical manner, and was also made far more earthquake-proof. Number 2. September the 17th, 1862, Battle of Antietam. Death toll 3,650 people approximately. It was the deadliest 24-hour period of the entire Civil War. On September the 17th, 1862, General Lee's attempt to invade Maryland was beat back, resulting in death and carnage on a colossal scale. Before the sun went down, some 3,650 Union and Confederate troops would be killed, with another 19,000 being wounded or captured. The massacre was so great that we can't actually say for certain how many people died. Our best guess is that it was somewhere like the number we're choosing here, but possibly many, many hundreds more. What's particularly tragic about Antietam is that it was largely a waste of life. Gettysburg may have killed north of 7,000, albeit over 3 days rather than one, but at least that struck a decisive victory for the Union. By contrast, Antietam may have pushed Lee back from Maryland, but it also left him in a strong defensive position and with fewer of his men killed or wounded than in the Union Army. For all that endless death and awful suffering, effectively, nothing really changed. Number 1. September the 8th, 1900. The Galveston Hurricane. Death toll 6,000 minimum. Remember in the introduction how I said there was no way of telling when a catastrophe would befall you? Well, it turns out we were wrong. If something terrible happens in the US, apparently it always happens in September. After the 1928 hurricane, 9/11, and the deadliest one-day battle of the Civil War, we now have the deadliest natural disaster and just plain deadliest day in US history. Wow, September. I mean, what did they ever do to you? The Galveston Hurricane was a level of death modern Americans simply have no experience with. Even if you want to combine the deaths of 9/11, Hurricane Katrina, and every single terror attack from September the 12th, 2001 onwards, you still wouldn't touch the Galveston disaster. A small island off the coast of Texas, it was once a massive vacation spot. On September the 8th, authorities issued last-minute warnings of an incoming hurricane, urging people to get to high ground. Most of those on vacation, they simply didn't listen, which was a big mistake. Galveston is only 9 feet above sea level. As the hurricane hit, a storm surge 15 feet high overwhelmed the island, washing thousands of people away. Somewhere between 6,000 and 8,000 people drowned, which is a stupefying death toll, and hopefully one that we'll never see exceeded. So I really hope you enjoyed that video. Do not forget to subscribe to this channel for brand new videos every day of the week. Also, I've got another channel. It's called Biographics. It's biographies of notable people from the present day, as well as history from Elon Musk to Osama bin Laden. You can check it out through the icon on the screen now. But if you want to watch something else right now, why not check out another TopTenz video or a Biographics video over there on the right. And as always, thank you for watching.